Today's lesson is how to create a textured stitch as an overlay. So we're going to do this with both our jersey stitch pattern as well as our herringbone stitch pattern. So they're both going to be what's called an overlay. What an overlay is basically just another pattern swatch over top of another pattern swatch. So two pattern swatches layered on top, like almost two sheets of paper that you can see through. So we have created our jersey stitch by now. Using the grid, we put it into repeat. It's now in our window swatch box. And here it is right here. So we have our jersey stitch already created. So when you have your pattern that you want to put a jersey stitch in, which I would recommend either a solid color or a stripe color for particular lessons, because that's commonly where jersey stitches are found. And here's some examples of what a jersey stitch looks like in an actual fabric swatch. So these are some knit fabrics, some sweaters and knit fabrics. And this is our jersey stitch. You can see it's like a V shape in a really fine, what it's called a fine gauge, which is a very fine knitted stripe, as well as a chunkier gauge, which is what this is, which is a chunkier jersey stitch sweater. So they both have these little V stitches running through, just two different kind of what they call gauges. But it's pretty much, gauges are like two different scales. Think of them as scales, large scale and small scale. So what we're going to have to do to create this overlay is anytime you have a pattern, whether it's a solid swatch or a stripe swatch, you have your fabric swatch here. If I click on it using the black arrow, let me get my tools out. If I get my, click on my fabric swatch, the black arrow, you see my fabric swatch is flat. What I want to do, I'm going to delete this for a second. I want to copy and paste that fabric swatch that I want to do a textured overlay on. So Command C, Command V, or Option, hold down the Option or Alt key on a PC till the double cursor arrows show themselves, and then you can click once and you can get a copy that way. So that's just another way to copy. But you should have two copies of your pattern. One of them is going to be the textured overlay. The other one's going to remain your stripe or solid pattern that you're going to have. So the fill box should be filled with your pattern, and then you're going to find your jersey stitch pattern in your window swatch box. So window swatches is open here. I'm going to click on it. Here's my jersey stitch, and now I have the same exact size box as my fabric swatch has, and that's really important because what I want to do is just stack it on top. And I'm going to make this purposely not aligned because I want to show you how important it is that we not only have the same size box for our textured overlay, we also need to make sure we align it to both the top and all the sides so that it literally lays like two sheets of paper laying flush on top of each other. So I'm going to hover over both of the pattern swatch and the textured overlay, and I'm going to go to Window Align. And I'm going to align to both the top here, vertical align top. I'm also going to align to the sides, and because it's the same size swatch box, all I have to do is align the top and one side, and now I know I have a perfectly aligned fabric swatch that matches the same fabric swatch we had for the stripe, since it was copied and pasted from the same size box. So there's our textured overlay, and the thing I wanted to show you is I wanted to show you that this would be like a chunky gauge, like what we saw on this swatch right here. And then if you wanted to do something that was a little finer, where there's multiple little rows of, let me zoom in, it's a little blurry because it's a scan texture, but it's multiple little rows of these little V stitches that the jersey stitches. If you want to do something smaller, a great way to do that is you take the same textured overlay, and you can see this is my small scale right here. So this would be what's called a fine gauge jersey stitch. This is just a smaller scale version of what I have here. So let me take that off for a second just to show you how I did this. So then all you would have to do is, I'm just going to copy and paste the same scale that I just had on there and do my quick window align, just because I'm making a copy. But if you wanted to make a smaller scale version, an easy way to do that is to use both the scale tool and something called the tilde key. And I'm going to scroll down here because I want you to find that key, tilde key, on your keyboard. It's either way, PCs or Macs, it's going to be in the top left-hand corner, usually under the escape key, and it looks exactly like this, like a little squiggle at the top and a little squiggle at the bottom. So that's our tilde key, and it's super important whenever you want to move patterns around inside of a shape, or you want to actually move the pattern around and scale at the same time, you're going to use both the scale tool and the tilde key. So let's click on, we're not object grouping these two things together, by the way. We're keeping our textured overlay over top as its own ungrouped piece. So don't group it to your stripe just yet. So you can see I pulled it away to show you that I can select it with the black arrow and separate it if I want to. So just clicking on the textured overlay only, go to your scale tool and go to your tilde key right here, tilde key. Hold it down, hold the tilde key down and watch where my cursor is. Here's my cursor, I'm wiggling it around. I want you to pull the cursor inward like this, inward motion with the mouse. Inward motion to make it smaller scale, outward motion to make it a bigger scale. So I'm going to show you both. So I'm going to make it smaller. I have the scale tool selected and tilde key held down with my finger. And now I'm going to take the mouse, and I always pull from the diagonal corners. I don't pull from in here on the sides, always from one top left-hand corner I pull in. So I'm going to pull in and watch the size of the scaled, the size of the box didn't change. It stays confined inside that box, but look at my pattern getting smaller, and look, you can do a side-by-side comparison. When I click and drag it in, it gets smaller, right? And if I wanted to click and drag it bigger, I would do the opposite direction. I would pull it outward like this, and I would watch my pattern get bigger and bigger, right? So what I want to do is make it smaller, because I want to do a smaller scale, and I'm just keep clicking it. As long as you hold the tilde key down, you have your scale tool selected, you will get a smaller version of that jersey stitch stripe. So now I'm going to let go of the tilde key, and I'm going to zoom in, and you can do a Command+ to zoom in on your keyboard. And now what the goal would be, if you're going to do a really what's called a fine gauge jersey stitch, which is just a small scale version, is you want to do maybe a few stacked little V stitches, which each V stitch is a jersey stitch. Maybe a couple of them appear across this horizontal stripe. So look at your stripe pattern and kind of see, maybe you have, you know, I have 5 stitches here, jersey stitches here in my blue stripe, and maybe 2.5 in my pink stripe, and maybe 1.5 in my green. So depending on the scale you want, you would just look at it and see how many jersey stitches exist in each stripe versus the big scale here that I have next to it that's more of a chunkier look. The next thing I want to do is I want to actually talk about how to recolor. Actually, sorry, I want to talk about doing an opacity. That would be the next thing I would do. So I want to click, again, have a separate textured stitch overlay. I want to go to opacity, and I want to lighten my opacity slightly to make it not so harsh of a black color over top of my stripe. And I can see right now I'm not even aligned over here. So let me window align. So I want to make sure my black color right here, even the one I have over here, I would use an opacity on, and I would lighten it up a little bit so that it's just a little textured accent, but it doesn't really, the black color doesn't stand off too harshly against the nice colors that I have in my stripe, which are more poppy colors. So I usually go down to maybe under 40% opacity just to let the stitch be an accent, not to let it overpower the design and all, because look at how dark it was when it was black. It was kind of taking a life of its own and taking over the pop color stripe. So I want to kind of bring it down, let it be soft. So you want to apply an opacity on your textured overlays as well, just to let them kind of complement the pattern, not really take over. And then after that you're done, I would just hover over both patterns. You know, again, make sure everything got aligned in case you moved things around. When you were doing your opacity and stuff, make sure you hover over, align it, and then do an object group, and that's going to be your jersey stitch with a textured overlay. So now going down to the herringbone weave, it'll be the same exact thing, is we're creating a separate textured overlay. So you already created your herringbone pattern, it's already in window swatches. You're going to copy and paste the same plaid design you just did, same size swatch box, to turn into your textured overlay of the herringbone, because I want to make sure they're both the same boxes. Do your window align, you know, align to the top, align to the sides, and then we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to do the tilde key again with the scale option to get a smaller scale. And here's some herringbone plaid patterns just to kind of show you how the little V chevron look of a herringbone weaves through a plaid fabric. So you can see a larger plaid fabric going through, but you see the little V chevrons running through. Same thing here. So I just want to show you that there. But you can see I have a smaller scale version of my herringbone because I use the tilde key and the scale tool to do that. And then remember to always do the opacity. This one I have opacity actually a little higher. I have it like more 63%. But you guys can just scroll down and kind of look, because everybody's plaids are going to have different colors in them than mine. Mine's a little bit more darker, so I actually could just click on it and go a little lighter. But really important that your textured overlays also don't have a stroke color. They have only a pattern fill. Same thing with your swatches underneath. They should only have a pattern fill in your fill box and no stroke outline. So one thing I wanted to just quickly tell you, that if you ever run into the issue of trying to recolor your textured overlay, say you started it off in black, you put it in your swatch box and you did use a dark black color to make it. If you ever wanted to go to recolor artwork, which the little scroll box, it's a little scroll wheel is here, the recolor scroll wheel. If you ever run into the issue where you're like, I double clicked on the black swatch under the word new, I double clicked on it, I clicked on red, you know, why didn't it change, whatever. The reason why is because, let me click on it again, is and if you ever run into that issue, you only run into that issue sometimes with black and pure white. So those two colors always sometimes might not recolor, even if you have the recolor art box checked in under the recolor artwork tool. White and black sometimes cause problems. Sometimes you double click on it, change it to another color, and it doesn't change. It stays black or it stays white. So if that happens to you, just click on here next to preset custom. There's a little box. Click on it and just go to here under the word preserve. A lot of times white and black will be selected. It means that you want to preserve your white and black lines. It'll never change unless you uncheck them. So if you uncheck black and you hit OK, now I can double click on the black and change it into a different color like you see here. If that wasn't checked off, and if it was still checked, that black color here, then it would have kept it black, and no matter how many times you double clicked it over here, it would never change. Same thing with white. So if you ever run into that issue, I just wanted to let you know how to change that. But what I will tell you is never change that recolor, what I just showed you a minute ago of not preserving the black and white. Never do that for body CADs, because we always want to keep a black stroke outline around our body CADs. So you never want to uncheck black or white when in the recolor artwork tool for your body CAD recolors, because we want to definitely keep that black stroke outline around all of our body CADs. So it only apply for something that has a black color inside your pattern swatch. So that's how you do a textured overlay.